Hey guys, welcome to another Trade Genius podcast. Philip here. Bob's out traveling, so it's just going to be me, and we're going to talk about Bitcoin, seismic moves in the Bitcoin space in the last 48 hours with one of the largest banking giants in the world, BlackRock, submitting for a Bitcoin ETF. So this has big implications. We're going to talk about that, what they've been doing, what other banks have been doing with Bitcoin, and we're going to look at the Bitcoin chart to see where we go from here. So let's dive in.
Trade Genius.
Hey guys, really briefly before we jump into this video, appreciate all the likes and subscribes, and if you can ring that notification button, that really helps us out. In addition to that, if you guys don't mind, head over to tradegenius.co, check out our specials we have over there. There's a number of different specials with different packages for all different experience types. If you're more into education, we have a package for that. If you just like to get into the room, primarily, we have a package for that as well, where you can see where we're calling out trades and things like that live, and also posting signals into our Discord signal rooms. So check it out, tradegenius.co. Appreciate you doing that. All right, guys. So, big news with BlackRock, one of the biggest banks in the world, $10 trillion under management, and they've submitted for a Bitcoin ETF. So we're going to dive into the details of what exactly is going on, what that means, and do they really have a chance at getting approved? So diving into the slides, it's funny because just 6 years ago, BlackRock CEO Larry Fink called Bitcoin an index of money laundering, and this was back when Bitcoin was 6K. So quite the shift now, and you see this often, right? We've seen it with JP Morgan. Remember, Jamie Dimon said that, Bitcoin was just trash, and that was one of the bigger dips in 2017 we got off of his comments. And then obviously the dip was bought, and ultimately JP Morgan is dealing with Bitcoin and was dealing with Bitcoin for their clients even back then. So a little bit of double speak again. At the banks, it's do as they do, not as they say, right? Anyway, BlackRock has filed for a Bitcoin ETF trust. Now there has been some arguments about, well, it's not really an ETF, it's a trust, right? If you look at the actual S1 registration statement, it does say iShares Bitcoin Trust, and some people liken that to GBTC, or OBTC is the lesser known trust that is like GBTC, Osprey Bitcoin Fund. And both of those at the current time are trading at about a 40 to 42% discount to the price of Bitcoin. And it's just the way that those funds are structured. Whereas this fund's going to be more structured in terms of the GLD ETF. Now, you guys are all familiar with GLD. It's the ETF for gold. And that ETF actually is structured as a trust. If you look it up, it's GLD Trust. But, they treat it like an ETF. So the structure on this is going to be more like that. And this is going to be a spot-based ETF. So that's a huge plus, right? That's been the big missing ingredient. So the question is going to be, will BlackRock have enough pull that the SEC says, yeah, you know what, these guys are big enough and we trust them to run this? The SEC has been hiding behind the fact that there's no firm regulations, and that's why they've been denying, spot ETF after spot ETF application. So maybe BlackRock is a big enough player that pushes them over the edge, and we do get that. And, they're not the only ones that are really getting invested into this Bitcoin space, right? If we look at different ways that these companies can get invested, now you might think, well, why aren't they buying Bitcoin outright? Some of the way things are structured, that Bitcoin's not an approved asset for some of the things they do. So what do? They'll buy stocks that are directly an indirect play on Bitcoin. So for example, MicroStrategies, right? If you look at BlackRock, they are at 6.24% stake. Bank of America's in there at 2.3%. You have Morgan Stanley, you have Fidelity. These are all big names that are in this MicroStrategy play. And if you're in MicroStrategy, you're primarily looking for them as a Bitcoin play, right? They're kind of a indirect, in some sense, a Bitcoin ETF, in that they're just like a holding company, right? So you're buying Bitcoin. MicroStrategy shares represents part of that massive Bitcoin holding. And it doesn't stop there. BlackRock also has a significant stake in Mara, right? The Bitcoin miner. They also have a significant stake in Riot, as does Vanguard. There's also a significant stake in CleanSpark, which is another miner. So quietly, BlackRock is investing pretty significant sums of money, not only in things that are directly related to spot Bitcoin, but also the mining of Bitcoin. So they're definitely getting really involved in the investment side and the future of Bitcoin. So, it's BlackRock. BlackRock doesn't lose. So what are they looking at? They're looking at basically what we're looking at, and that is you have something that's going to be growing in market cap. Once you get past that $1 trillion market cap, it opens up a huge investment channel for institutional
players. And so we're already seeing that. We crossed over the $1 trillion market cap. We've obviously back under it, but these banks, I think, see the light at the end of the tunnel, and there's only so much Bitcoin out there that can be accumulated. And so you're going to start getting into this game theory where he who has the most Bitcoin wins, basically, right? So, and then on top of that, you want to control the production of that. And the best way to do that is with these miners. And as I've said, at the end of the day, once the floating supply out there, which is currently about 2 million, once that's gone, what do you have left? It's just what the miners are going to produce, right? So they're the next diamond cartel in all of this. So this is really bullish long-term for Bitcoin. Now, does that mean Bitcoin is just going to take off to the races? We're up today going into the close on Friday. What does that mean? Well, let's take a look at the chart. All right, so here's a daily chart of Bitcoin. As you can see, a big impulse move up here into Friday. You know, this has been OPEX week, bullish all week into that. Now that the flows have come off, you've seen the equities today kind of come off the highs there, and we just didn't have that persistent bid under the market like we've seen going into OPEX. And that's by design, because all of the gamma that was driving that flow up is now gone and removed. So a huge chunk of the bid, the thing that was driving the bid, is gone from the markets. So we're going to probably go into a window of weakness here, and you know, it's probably going to affect Bitcoin as well. So what I have here is a daily chart, and the red line up here, that's the 50 simple moving average on the daily. And as you can see, we've crossed down under it. The blue line is the 20 WMA weighted moving average on the daily. That's also important. So what bulls want to see is basically a cross back over the 20 weighted moving average. You want to get a daily close over that and then turn that into support. If you don't, if all we're going to do is wick over it, we kind of get into the situation like we have back here where it's becoming resistance. This area right now is kind of resistance because we're going into a previous area where we broke down. So a lot of times with Bitcoin, when you get these large red candles, and if it doesn't just cascade away and it hangs around, a lot of times you're going to get a short squeeze back to the point of where it breaks. And that's what we got today. So the question is, you know, is this going to get legs and move higher? Well, I can tell you that the shorts were off sides down here. We could see that they were really asking for a short squeeze based on positioning. And sure enough, they got the squeeze today. I can tell you right now at these levels that the bulls are now in that situation where there are too many bulls on one side of the boat, and they're at danger of also getting pushed back down and stopped out. So we'll have to see. Sometimes that condition can persist and you can get a move up while the longs are in jeopardy of getting a long squeeze or, you know, basically a stop run down. But right now, at this point in time, we are running into some resistance. So what would be very important for bulls is to be able to come back. Now, this other blue line is the 144 simple moving average on the daily, and this pinkish line is the 377 EMA or exponential moving average. Okay, and both of those are approximately at 26,000 plus. So ideally, the bulls, okay, aren't going to want to see price drop back under 2,600 if they, or 26,000. If they do drop under, if it does drop under 26,000, then at the very least you want to see about 25,800 hold, because you have a lot of consolidation, right? They see all these small little bodies. So you want that area to hold if it does pull back or get smacked back, or some of these leverage longs get stopped out. If we drop below that, then this is a failed move higher and we're going to roll over. Because we're going into a period of weakness with equities, because it's post OPEX, and we're going into the last part of June, which is seasonally weak for risk on assets. And you also have things like the top of the JP Morgan collar, which is about 100 points lower on SPX. That thing typically draws price back to it. So like we've overthrown some of the big structural references in the market, in the equities market, and Bitcoin's been sympathetic with that move, right, going up. But on the whole, Bitcoin has been rolling over while equities have been going higher, and Bitcoin typically leads the SPX when it comes to things like cycle tops, right? Cycle tops and cycle bottoms. Bitcoin tends to make the turn first, whether it's turning down, rolling over, or bottoming and turning up first. Okay, so that's the bearish look here we have for Bitcoin relative to equities, and why I think that unless we really start to see the push up here and we get a push, and if we do, we've got to get past this 50 SMA if this were to happen. But right now we're at the risk of this kind of topping out here and pulling back. So again, if we lose the 26,000 area, you don't want to see it break down much more than 25,800. Otherwise, we're going to probably undo a lot of this move. and we're going to probably test the lows again. And we're starting to break down into this larger range here, which I don't have totally exposed on the chart, but this is a range, a very large range, kind of on the weekly time frame, where the top of it is supportive, right? We've had a couple instances where we came up, rejected, came up, broke through. So this makes sense that we're getting a bullish reaction here. But ideally we'd want to see a bigger push. If this is all we get and we come back down and we start falling back inside this range, we're probably going to be looking at a move back down toward 24, which is this sub range that we have in here based on the supply that we have back here. Okay, we'll probably test the bottom of that. Wouldn't be surprised to see some consolidation up and down in this move. Right now, lately, Bitcoin's been liquidating the shorts that are off sides and the longs that are off sides. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these candles, big strong daily candle down and big strong daily candle back up. They're going from one side of the boat to the other, and it's creating rather easy squeezes on both the longs and the shorts. And I think that's why you're seeing some of this back and forth that you see on the daily chart, which is fine. That's something we are monitoring in the room. So if you guys are curious as to when those conditions are ripe for those squeezes, come in the room, because we update that multiple times a day. We show the charts of where the shorts are offsides or the longs are offside. So, come on in. We have crypto updates all day. But that's what we're looking at here, guys. So we want to see for the weekend, you want to see basically this move hold over the 20 SMA, which is 26,250. And if it does, I think we could potentially see a move higher and possibly even back test the 50 SMA. But I will say again, longs are over leveraged here. So that is something that's working against this move right now. If the shorts were still piled in here, then yeah, this would have more legs. But we saw that unwind in the room today. And so the shorts are totally unwound. And now the longs are at risk for a pullback and a stop out. So going into the weekend, our Friday close level is somewhere around 26,300 is the Friday close. So that's like our gap reference for the weekend. So if we get too far away from 26,300, then we'll probably see a gap that will most likely close, because most of them have not been holding for very long after we come out of the weekend. So, and weekends have been fairly quiet. So any kind of move that we get typically gets faded back down. So just keep that in mind. So those are the levels I'm currently looking at going into the weekend and into next week. But I think the bears might have an upper hand here, especially if we don't close the deal here. And we actually, if this day closes back under like the 144 and that 377, that'd be very bearish. And I think we're probably going to go back and test these swing lows that we just put in. Ultimately, I think we do. Even if we push up higher, I think we're going to come back down and test these areas before it's all said and done. I think we have weakness into the end of June because now we're past that huge hedging activity that we saw going into OPEX, which was today. All right, guys, well, that's going to do it for this episode. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think Bitcoin's going to bounce and hold here and maybe go higher? Is it going to attack those 30K highs? Or do you think we're going to head down and finally close that gap down at 20K? Let me know your thoughts below. Otherwise, I'll see you on tomorrow's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Trade Genius.